The dim emergency lights of the crashed shuttle flickered like dying stars across the jagged wreckage on the xenoforest floor of Epsilon Vorith, casting long, twisting shadows that clawed at the edges of Captain Elias Kane's vision. The air was thick with the metallic tang of spilled coolant and the acrid scent of alien sap from trees that pulsed with bioluminescent veins. His heart hammered against his ribs like a war drum, each beat a reminder of the carnage that had unfolded in the last hour. The rest of his landing party, good people, soldiers, scientists, lay scattered in the underbrush, their screams still echoing in his mind. Torn apart by something massive, something ancient, the apex predators of this uncharted world that humanity had dared to claim in the name of exploration. Elias gripped the shattered stock of his pulse rifle, the weapon useless now, its power cell cracked and leaking. Blood trickled from a deep gash on his forehead, stinging his eyes, but he refused to wipe it away. Movement in the underbrush ahead froze him solid. The foliage parted with a violent rustle, and there it was, the predator cub. No larger than an earth panther, yet built like a nightmare forged in the fires of evolution's cruelest forge. Obsidian scales rippled across its muscular frame, shimmering with iridescent hues that shifted from deep void black to blood red under the flickering lights. 6 eyes, glowing slits of molten gold, fixed on him with a mix of curiosity and primal hunger. Its maw, lined with rows of serrated teeth capable of shearing through durasteel, split wide in what could only be described as a playful roar. The sound erupted like thunder rolling through a canyon, shaking the leaves and sending vibrations deep into Elias's chest. It wasn't the full-throated challenge of an adult. This was lighter, almost experimental, laced with the innocent ferocity of youth testing its limits. But innocence didn't make it any less deadly. This cub was the offspring of the beasts that had ambushed their shuttle upon descent, their howls coordinating like a symphony of death. One had already crushed the pilot's module, another had dragged away Lieutenant Reyes into the shadows. Now, this little monster, barely weaned, perhaps, but already a killer in training, saw Elias as prey. Or worse, as a toy. Adrenaline surged through Elias's veins, hot and electric, sharpening every sense to a razor's edge. Time slowed. He could hear the cub's claws scraping against the damp soil, smell the wild musk of its hide mixed with the ozone of the crashed ship's electronics. His mind raced with fragments of the briefing. Vorathian apex predators exhibit pack intelligence and play hunting behaviors. Approach with extreme caution. Do not engage juveniles. Too late for that. The cub lowered its head, shoulders bunching, powerful hind legs coiling like springs. It roared again, louder this time, a challenge wrapped in glee, and lunged. Elias's body moved on instinct honed by decades of frontier skirmishes, human wars against the void, and the unyielding will that had propelled his species across the stars. He wouldn't die cowering in the dirt of some alien hellhole. Not while there was breath in his lungs. As the cub closed the distance in a blur of scales and fangs, its breath washing over him like a furnace, Elias planted his feet, threw his head back, and roared. It wasn't a scream. It was something deeper, primal, drawn from the very core of what made humans the relentless force they were. A guttural bellow that built from his gut, exploding outward with raw power. It carried the weight of every ancestor who had faced down saber-toothed beasts on ancient Earth, every explorer who had stared into the abyss of space and laughed, every soldier who had charged impossible odds because surrender was never an option. The sound tore through the forest, louder than the cub's playful thunder, vibrating the air itself, rattling loose debris from the shuttle wreckage. It echoed off the towering trees, a declaration, I am human. I do not yield. The cub's leap faltered mid-air. Its 6 eyes widened in shock, pupils dilating as the unexpected wall of sound slammed into it. Talons that could eviscerate a man in one swipe scraped desperately for purchase on the ground as it twisted, landing awkwardly. For a heartbeat that stretched into eternity, suspense hung thick in the air like the charge before a lightning strike. Elias braced for the counterattack, his body tensed, ready to grapple the beast with nothing but his bare hands and the fury of survival. The cub's maw opened again, but instead of a roar, a confused whine escaped. Then, with a dramatic flop, it toppled sideways into the dirt. The predator cub rolled onto its back, massive tail, thick as Elias's thigh and tipped with natural barbs, thrashing wildly. Not in rage. Wagging. Enthusiastically. Its powerful limbs kicked at the air in playful submission, tongue lolling from the side of its jaws in a grotesque parody of a happy dog. The iridescent scales caught the emergency lights, flashing like celebratory fireworks. A low, rumbling purr-like growl emanated from its chest, vibrating the ground beneath Elias's boots. The beast that had moments ago embodied certain death now looked up at him with what could only be interpreted as adoration and invitation for more roughhousing. Elias stood there, chest heaving, the roar dying in his throat into ragged, disbelieving laughter. Tears stung the corners of his eyes, not just from the blood or the pain, but from the overwhelming release of tension that crashed over him like a tidal wave. The emotional intensity of the moment threatened to buckle his knees. Fear had gripped him like a vice, the kind that whispered of oblivion, of failing his crew, of humanity's fragile foothold in a universe that didn't care. But now? Now it was something fiercer, triumph laced with wonder. He had roared louder. And the predator had fallen over, wagging its tail. "Holy shit," he muttered, voice hoarse. He took a tentative step forward, and the cub responded by wriggling closer on its back, exposing its vulnerable underbelly, a sign of trust no human training manual had ever prepared him for. Its 6 eyes blinked slowly, the golden glow softening. Elias knelt, his hand trembling as he reached out. The cub nuzzled his palm with surprising gentleness, its rough scales warm and alive against his skin. The contrast was surreal, this creature, born to hunt and dominate, reduced to puppy-like glee by a human's defiance. But the forest wasn't done with them. In the distance, a deeper, resonant howl pierced the night, a mother's call, heavy with authority and concern. The ground trembled faintly as something enormous moved through the underbrush, drawn by the commotion. Elias's laughter faded, replaced by a new spike of suspense. The cub's ears, frilled appendages that fanned out like radar dishes, perked up, and it let out an excited yip, rolling to its feet and circling Elias protectively. Or possessively. Its tail continued to wag, brushing against his leg with enough force to nearly knock him off balance. "Easy there, big guy," Elias whispered, his mind racing. This could still end in blood. The mother would see a human near her cub and, what? Attack? Or recognize the strange dominance display? HFY legends were full of humans turning the impossible into advantage, but this felt raw, unscripted. He scanned the wreckage quickly, spotting a flare gun half buried in the mud. Not much, but better than nothing. The cub bumped its head against his thigh, nearly toppling him again, purring louder. Its playfulness was infectious, cutting through the terror like a lifeline. As the mother's massive silhouette began to emerge from the treeline. Easily the size of a shuttle itself, scales armored like a tank, Elias straightened. The cub bounded between them, yipping and roaring playfully, as if introducing its new favorite toy. The adult predator paused, 6 eyes narrowing, head tilting. Elias felt the weight of its gaze, ancient and calculating. His pulse thundered, but he didn't back down. Instead, he drew in a deep breath and roared again, not as loud, but steady, deliberate. A challenge met with respect. The mother lowered her head slowly, nostrils flaring as she scented the air. The cub nuzzled her leg before returning to Elias, tail wagging furiously. In that suspended moment, the emotional intensity peaked, fear for his life intertwined with awe at the connection forged in chaos. Humanity wasn't just surviving here. They were bonding with the untamable. Elias's mind flashed back to the long journey that had brought him here. Years aboard the colony ship Pioneer, training in zero-G combat sims, studying xenobiology holovids that never quite captured the reality of a living, breathing predator. The crash had been no accident, orbital defenses of a long-forgotten precursor race, perhaps, or simple bad luck in a galaxy full of teeth. His crew had fought bravely, but numbers meant nothing against the pack. Now, alone, he had done what humans did best: improvise, adapt, overcome. The mother huffed, a sound like grinding boulders, and settled onto her haunches. The cub took this as permission, leaping around Elias in circles, occasionally nipping at his boots with playful gentleness. He found himself scratching behind its frilled ears, the scales surprisingly smooth there. Laughter bubbled up again, mixing with the adrenaline crash. "You're a menace, you know that?" The cub responded with another happy roar, softer this time, mimicking his earlier outburst but at a fraction of the volume. Suspense lingered as the mother watched, but it shifted into something profound. This wasn't conquest through weapons or technology alone. It was the raw spirit of humanity, the willingness to roar back at the dark, to turn terror into play. Elias imagined the reports he would file if rescue came, first contact not with blasters, but with a belly rub and a louder voice. The Vorathian predators, feared across scout logs, wagging tails at a single human. Minutes stretched as the unlikely trio remained in the clearing. The emergency lights continued their dance, but now they felt less like harbingers of doom and more like stage lights for an improbable alliance. Elias's wounds ached, his body screamed for rest, but the emotional high kept him upright. The cub leaned against him, heavy and warm, its purring a soothing rumble that drowned out the distant calls of other creatures. When the rescue beacon finally pinged, activated by some miracle of the shuttle's failing systems, Elias allowed himself a deep, steadying breath. The mother stirred, but instead of aggression, she nudged her cub gently toward the human. A sign of approval? Trust earned through sheer audacity? As shuttle lights broke through the canopy overhead, Elias placed a hand on the cub's head. "Stick around, kid. We've got a whole universe to explore." The predator cub roared once more in play, and Elias answered, louder, their voices mingling in the night. It fell over again, tail wagging, and in that moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath in respect. Humanity had roared. And the stars would never be the same.